We're talking about faith. My first giant challenge of faith was when I was 20 years old. God called me to plant a church, but I knew I wasn't ready. I knew I wasn't capable. I knew I didn't have what it took. So I began to pray every day that God would guide me to the right team to go with me, that He would give us the right time to go, and He would lead us to the right town. Over the next few years, God added some incredible teammates. God gave us the right timing for us to go plant a church, but the town was a big issue. I was from a small town of 20,000 people, but God was calling us to go to a large city with over 1 million people. Well, I went to check out the city where God was calling us, and I went to the tallest building and got to the top of that building and looked out over the city, and I got to tell you, I was intimidated. I could see houses as far as I could see. It was more than I can imagine, more than I could get my brain around. Well, I went back that night and I was having a crisis in my faith. And so I took a prayer walk, and as I began to pray, I had my Bible with me. God took me to the story of David and Goliath. You know the story. All the Israelites were afraid of Goliath. They could see his 9-foot stature and strength. They'd heard about all his victories, and they were intimidated because they were looking at Goliath. But David looked at it totally differently. It says in 1 Samuel 17, David said to the Philistine Goliath, "You come against me with a dagger and a spear and a sword, but I come against you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of angel armies. You have defiled him. Today the Lord will hand you over to me. Today I'll strike you down. Then all the world will know that Israel has a God, and this whole assembly will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's. He will hand you over to us." You see, David wasn't looking at the giant. David was looking at God. And as he focused on the power of God, he knew that he could succeed and have victory. God spoke to me. And God spoke to me very clearly that night, and He said, "Look, Dave, you're looking at the wrong thing. Don't look at how small you are and how big the city is. I want you to look at how big I am and how small the city is in comparison. You can make a difference if you'll trust me." So that changed my whole approach, and I began to trust God. And I knew that I needed to grow my faith, so I found 24 great Bible verses about faith and memorized them. I began to pray bigger faith prayers and see God answered. I began to get up every morning and make it a practice of intentionally focusing on God and not my problems. I began to take faith risk, and see God provide. And God did. At the right time, we moved to that city on a Saturday and started church the next morning in my house on Sunday. Over the next 20 years, that church grew to over 2,000 people. We started a handful of churches. We had 125 groups. Lots of people were reached for Jesus. God did big things through a little person's extraordinary God, ordinary people. That's the key to faith.